probably not your favorite thing to do. But hopefully you will learn something that can be helpful to you. I've tried to kind of switch this up a little bit, so maybe it's not quite so worrying. Anyway, I wanted to start today with questions. Do any of you have any questions about diabetes that you want to talk about? Probably all of us know someone with diabetes. Either we have it ourselves, someone in our families, our friends, associates. So it's kind of a very important aspect of our lives these days. It's considered an epidemic. And I just the other day saw a statistic that they say 1 out of every 3 adults have pre-diabetes. And probably 90% of them don't realize that. So that kind of shows you where we are. It's very pervasive in our society for various reasons. So what we can learn about it that's important is maybe how to take care of ourselves, so maybe even though we get diabetes in the future, we're kind of at the front end of it, and we can take care of it. Also, so we can be supportive of our family members and our friends that are dealing with diabetes. So if you have any questions as we go along, please don't hesitate to ask. Let's take the first slide.
Okay.
So if we don't have any questions, the next thing I thought that might be interesting to us is to understand a little bit more how people feel that do have diabetes. And these are written by people who have diabetes. It's kind of small, I'll read them through. But how we can interact with them in a positive way. So they have a few things to say don't do and a few things to say do. Number 1 is don't offer unsolicited advice about my eating or other aspect of my diabetes. One of the complaints I hear a lot is when they go to eat something, someone says, you can't have that, or you shouldn't be eating that, or whatever. The diet recommendations these days has changed a lot. And so there really isn't anything that they cannot have if they work it right. But I think the thing that's hard is when someone else is saying, you can't have that. And another important part of this is don't offer unsolicited advice. If they ask you for advice, then, or if you ask them, that's a little different story. They say, besides many of the popularly held beliefs about diabetes, like you should just stop eating sugar, they're out of date or just plain wrong, which is true. Number 2 is do realize and appreciate that diabetes is hard work. Someone that has particularly type 1 diabetes, it takes up a large amount of their thinking. They have to pay attention to what they're eating, how much medication they're getting, because a lot of people these days have those pumps that they have to adjust. They have to factor in exercise and stress and so much more every day. Come on in and have a seat. Number 3 is don't tell me horror stories about your grandmother or other people with diabetes you've heard about. You can imagine, some of those stories really do stick in our minds, but you can imagine if you have diabetes, you really don't want to dwell on what's happened, because the outlook today is very positive for someone that has diabetes, and they don't like to think about what scary things that could happen. Number 4 is do offer to join me in making healthy lifestyle changes. It would be nice to have someone to exercise with, or someone that's kind of with you in your healthy eating habits. That's what they would like. Number 5 is don't look so horrified when I check my blood sugar, give myself an injection. Those are normal things, and sometimes you can imagine how disconcerting that is if someone next to you is looking like, whoa, you really don't want to show me that. It's very common, actually, for someone who takes diabetes injection or insulin injections to do it right at the table in a restaurant, right through their clothing. That works just fine, and you might see that a lot, but don't look horrified when you see it, I guess. Number 6, do ask how you might be helpful. And this is the important thing. You know, ask them. Ask them what they need. Ask them if you can be of help, because I think they would let you know. Number 7, don't offer thoughtless reassurances. Tell them that, don't worry, you know, it's going to be okay. You know, maybe they need that, but according to them, it's not very useful. Let's see what they say about. When you first learn about my diabetes, you may want to reassure me by saying things like, hey, it could be worse, you could have cancer. This won't make me feel better. And the implicit message seems to be that diabetes is no big deal. Well, diabetes, like cancer, is a big deal. 8, do be supportive of my efforts for self-care. Once again, just being supportive. Number 9, don't peek at or comment on my blood glucose numbers without asking me first. The kids this really bothers them. I understand the perspective of a parent who wants to know exactly where things are going, but it is private information, so don't do that unless you ask their permission. And number 10 is do offer your love and encouragement. That's important. You know, if someone knows that other people are supportive and willing to help, that makes a big deal. Okay, let's go on to the next one. Okay, risk factors. So if you don't have diabetes, what things are going to make you more likely to get diabetes? And these are the risk factors that we have. Number 1 is poor eating habits. 2 is lack of physical activity or exercise. 3, being overweight. 4, a family history of diabetes. And it used to be that they believed that if you had a family history of type 1 diabetes, so the type where you have to have insulin injections, they used to say that ran in families. Now they're saying if you have any diabetes in your family, you are more likely to get diabetes. So even type 2 is included. Next is age. If we live long enough, we're looking at the possibility of diabetes. One of the physicians in town says if we live long enough, we all would have it. So, the next one is ethnic background. Hispanics, blacks, Asians to a certain extent, American Indians, and people from Finland. They are all more likely to have diabetes. The Pima Indians are the highest, and they have 50%. So 1 out of every 2 people that is a Pima Indian has diabetes. So your ethnic background makes a difference. And other medical conditions. Sometimes you have to take medications that put your blood sugar up, or some other disease of the pancreas or something like that makes a difference. So if you look at these, there are a few we can do nothing about. To a certain extent, other medical conditions, but definitely our background, our age, our family history, we can do nothing about. But the rest of them we can do something about. So poor eating habits, lack of exercise, being overweight, those we can do something about. And those are something we should be working on. Okay, let's take the next one. So the diabetes diet is always an issue. They don't even want to call it a diet these days. They want it to be just habits of healthy eating, okay? Lifestyle changes is what they're after. Because when you have a diet, you have the feeling you're going on it. You can also go off of it. And it's not very helpful. I think they've learned that as soon as they say, you cannot have this, that's exactly what we want. So We're just looking at it's a way of eating when you have diabetes. And one of the most important things you can do is to increase the fiber in your diet. So now we're talking about a healthy way of eating that everybody can follow. So you wouldn't have to eat differently than your family. It's just a good, healthy way of eating. And number one is to increase the fiber in our diet. I would venture to say that there are probably very few of us in this room that eat enough fruits and vegetables every day. The recommendation is 5 servings of fruit and vegetables a day. To me, that means fruit at every meal and vegetables at 2, or snacks that have those snacks. So that's the first thing we could strive for. And we need to increase the raw vegetables. Number 2 is cooked vegetables. Number 3 is fresh fruit, as far as fiber goes. So raw vegetables have the most fiber. And according to this way of eating, you can have as much raw vegetables as you want. They really don't affect your blood sugar much. Cooked vegetables and fruit. And even when you think you're eating that way, pay attention for a few days and really see how much you really are following that. Because I found I try to get fruits and vegetables in my meals, but sometimes I'm lacking. I was surprised at how often I don't have those 5 servings of fruits and vegetables every day. Then the second thing is to eat healthy snacks. So what do healthy snacks? What does that mean to you? What are healthy snacks to you?
Healthy big fruits and vegetables.
Fruits and vegetables. Okay. Any other ideas? Protein in a snack is good. And I think a good way to change what we're eating as far as snacks, it takes a little bit of preparation and time. If you had some vegetables, if you had some raw vegetables cut up and you could grab them with a dip, it takes a little preparation to have that ready. Sometimes it's just easier to grab something on the way out of the store or a package of chips, that kind of stuff. Just think a little ahead and prepare some of those healthy snacks. And then the recommendations are, there's 4 of them here. Number 1, you should eat regular meals. Anybody like to skip a meal? Skip breakfast? Don't have much time? Work through lunch, and then you're so hungry at dinner time, you eat a lot. And your body can't process as much. I mean, if you have, even if you don't have diabetes, your blood sugar likely will still go up because the insulin that you have can't get through that pile of food that you eat at dinner time. If you spread it out, 3 meals a day and a bedtime snack, you can handle it better. And even, especially if you have diabetes, you want to do that. Okay? That's what I mean by regular. The same size means it's kind of the same thing. Don't skimp on one meal and eat a lot of another one. So about the same size of meals throughout the day. And there's ways that you can do that. A lot of people have a little difficulty with breakfast. You could drink one of those meal replacement drinks. Ensure booze. You go to Carnation Instant Breakfast. If you aren't hungry for breakfast, you could sit at it for a while. But try to get breakfast in there. It'll help you out throughout the day. Okay, healthy. We've talked about that. Make sure that you've got fruits and vegetables in your diet. Okay? And the last one is balance. That means that there's no category that you need to get rid of. We tend to want to get rid of the carbohydrates. But carbohydrates give our body energy. Okay? Carbohydrates change to glucose, it's true, but that's where we get energy. So I had a lady come in the other day, and she wasn't feeling well. She was recovering from, I think, pneumonia. She was older, and she told me that most of the morning till about 10 o'clock, she felt hazy. She just, couldn't seem to think, couldn't seem to get going. Well, that lot of energy, and everything in the body, including the brain, needs that. The brain even kind of more than other areas. And so the fact that she was kind of hazy, she couldn't think, that's a symptom of low blood sugar. Likewise, when someone's blood sugar goes really low and they have diabetes and someone gets really confused, that's what's happened. One gentleman told me that he knew he was getting low, so he stopped at Walmart to get something. And he spent an hour in the store. He doesn't even know what he did with that. He didn't get what he needed. He just couldn't think. And I guess he just wandered around for an hour. That's very typical. So you've got to have, you can't cut out those carbs altogether because then you don't have enough. The solution for the older lady, she needed to have a bedtime snack, and she needed to get breakfast when she got up, and she needed to eat a little bit more. She had been taking care of her diabetes for years and years, and it had worked for her, but now she's older, she didn't have as much appetite, she'd gone to totally sugar-free stuff, she didn't have enough glucose going in there to give her, the energy that she needed. So I said, well, cut out the sugar-free stuff and eat more. And she started feeling better. So we don't want to cut out carbs. And if you're giving someone some advice, when you see they have diabetes, you're going to look and see how many carbs they're eating. It's just what we think. Yeah, you need to have a certain amount of carbs. Okay, let's go on. Okay, here are some pictures of a balanced meal. They're missing the fruit, but see you have some, it looks like meat combination of beans. It's kind of a taco plate. But you've got carbohydrates in the tortillas, you've got protein in the meat, and then you have lots of raw vegetables. Good thing. Okay, next. Here's another idea. Protein, we don't pay much attention to protein and fats on this way of eating. If you have cholesterol issues, you should kind of try and cut your saturated fat. But the protein doesn't make a big difference in your glucose. It's mostly the carbs. So that's quite a bit of protein, but it doesn't matter. That's a good one. Okay, next. Here's another one. They look pretty good. You notice that you have protein, you have vegetables, you have starch in the rice. Okay. Hispanic people have a hard time because the things they love to eat are tortillas, rice, beans, and not a lot of meat. And so all those are carbohydrate. They need to get more raw vegetables in there. This was kind of an idea for them. Go ahead. Another Hispanic plate kind of thing. Okay. So do you have any questions about the diet or way of eating? So you can manage to eat. Let me try another word. You can eat anything you want if you manage it correctly. Okay. So if you had a dessert that you really wanted to eat, you could have a nice chef salad for dinner that had protein, had meat, cheese, and all kinds of vegetables, maybe even some dried meat in there. That has very little carbs, almost none. So with that, then you could have a dessert, a fairly nice dessert that you want. But you can't do this every night. And one of the best suggestions, I think, is to have your fruit at dinner kind of as a dessert. That's what the Mediterranean diet does, and it's a good diet, is to eat your fruit last things. It kind of gives you the food, and you have something sweet. It feels good. Anyway, that's a suggestion. Any other questions? Okay, we're going to talk about medications. Mariana commented to me that that sometimes it's hard to know whether your medication is right for you. She wanted me to talk about that. I cannot tell you if your medication is right for you. That's something that you need to talk to a physician about. But I can tell you that diabetes is really a self-help disease. It's really, a lot of it depends on you. You need to feed information to the doctor so he will know what to do. It's not like a broken bone that he can fix and you can just wait for it to get better. You have to be involved. And another thing that's really different about diabetes is that every person is somewhat different. There are a lot of people that have similar symptoms, but if you were asking people, how do you feel low blood sugar, for instance, you would get a wide variety of symptoms. Shakiness, some people get numb around their mouth. I think that's such a strange symptom, but it is. Breaking out in a cold sweat. Confusion, like this gentleman that went into Walmart. And irritability is a very interesting one. And I've seen it mostly in men. But it's not just a little irritability, it is a lot. One man said, "You've got to help me or I'm going to end up in a divorce." He would start throwing things. So their spouse will tell you that something that's really not like them, but they go crazy, you know. So irritability, anyway, lots of different symptoms. Every person is somewhat different. So you can imagine if your physician is trying to give you a medication, that not every medication is going to be right for you. The most common oral medication that we're using now is called metformin, which is a generic form. And it's so good because it works in about 4 or 5 different ways to help your blood sugar. All the rest of the medications, you know, just target one way. But not everyone can take metformin. There's probably about 10% of people that try it that can't. It affects their GI tract. They get diarrhea, nausea, that kind of stuff. And it doesn't go away. So that's kind of the way it is with other medications. Some medications work for some people and don't for others. So if you find that the doctor is kind of changing things, don't think that he doesn't know what he's doing necessarily. He's trying to find the right fit for you. And sometimes medications work for a while and then they don't. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. But people with diabetes seem to have this problem more than others, that sometimes you have to change medications, not doctors, but get a different combination. So another thing I can say about medications is that if you look at the side effects, you don't want to take any medications. Is that right? You're hearing it on the TV, you're hearing these ads, and you think, why would anyone in their right mind take that medication, all these side effects? You must remember that when they do these studies, and they're doing lots of studies, and they have sometimes a lot of people on the studies, anything that happens to those people during the studies, it goes on to the possibility of side effects, because they don't know whether the medication is causing that or something else. So if you read side effects on your medication information, you'll see about every possible symptom there, don't you? It's hard to know what you're really looking for. So ask the doctor and ask the pharmacist. He's a very good source. Ask him what the most common side effects you should be looking for are. Otherwise you think, oh, this sounds terrible. I don't know, I want to take this. You know, it's just the way that it is these days. So just be aware, number one, that it might take a little while to find a medication that works, and number two, you know, talk to the pharmacist about what side effects you should be looking for, and he can tell you. And don't be afraid to get back to the doctor. If you have a question, if something's not feeling right, don't be afraid to get back to the doctor, because you are the most important person in this. Once again, it's not like a broken bone. You need to give information to the physician so he can know how to take care of things. Okay, so the last thing is exercise. Something that most of us have a difficult time with. We don't have time in our day, came to me and we could put all his blood sugar readings on a chart. And they were all over the place until at one point they went down into the normal range. Very epic. And I said, what happened right here? And he started to exercise. It really makes a big difference. What we're talking about is some form of aerobic exercise. That means you get your heart rate up, and it keeps your heart rate up for however long, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. That's what helps your blood sugar. So walking is just as good as anything, but you have to walk at a clip that you feel like you're exerting yourself a little bit. Start out slow, add a few minutes, try to get up to a half hour a day if you can, but even a couple 15-minute sections or a couple 10-minute sections a day will be very helpful to you. So I can't say enough about exercise. Now that the weather's getting good, it's so beautiful out there today, it's a good time. So walking the dog or going with your spouse on a walk, some way that you can get some exercise in there. Okay. Any questions about anything? That's about all I have. I do have some cards here. If you have any questions, or if you would like to come in and sit down and talk to me, I'd be happy to help you. There's no charge to that. Just let me know. If you want any information on anything, give me a call. And I do have a blood